Hello and welcome to the podcast. If this is your first time listening, please follow me on Spotify, the podcast app on Apple devices, or YouTube at Real Juan Alcala. If you find the content interesting, leave a rating and comment. You can also follow me on Instagram on my official page at Reasonable with Juan Alcala. You can also find the video format now on YouTube, so if you want to continue watching this podcast, you can follow me again on my YouTube account at Real Juan Ocala. So where have I been? I've been doing a lot of homework, a lot of studying for exams, and so it's been a while since I posted a podcast. And today, time has been freed up for me to do this, and I've been thinking about the certain topic I wanted to talk about today. And so in spirit of, let's say, creativity or self-expression, I wrote this down for the last like maybe couple of days. I've been writing here and there, and this is what I wrote. Have you ever worried excessively about something? I have, and everyone has or will at some point. It is a feeling that something bad will happen to oneself or someone else. This bad can be almost anything. It is the thought of someone leaving our lives, maybe a girlfriend or a boyfriend. If you can come, it could come from our jobs, layoffs, from downsizing, or worrying about a boss's opinion of us. You can be worried about bills and how to pay for them. You can be concerned about your family having enough or their opinion of you. It is essential to realize that worrying is the thought of something bad happening, rather than the physical stress one feels when something happens. That is the most significant difference. Stress and worry are not the same, but can sometimes overlap. Worry can flood our minds and affect our behavior in ways we cannot imagine. Thinking open-mindedly, let us consider that the sources of worry deemed irrelevant by most people can be too much for someone to live with. Let us imagine that these unfortunate souls constantly worry about almost everything in their day-to-day lives. There could be a mental disorder or an illness in this population that is keeping them from seeing the forest for the trees. It is keeping them from seeing the bigger picture. Distinguishing your mind from excessively worrying about a problem can be good and is generally good advice. A person focused primarily on problems 24/7 is not good. You can distract your mind by eating something you love, watching some uh, entertainment on TV, conversating with a friend, or watching your team play your favorite sport. But of course, a person can become too distracted and forget that there are things to worry about. In the spirit of the steel man argument, we should give the devil its due and consider that it is possible that the worst thing can happen. What if the excessive worry was justified the entire time? What if worrying was beneficial? And that's kind of where I leave off with my writing here. I think about the people out there that worry and worry and worry about what can happen. And even in my own life, what has caused me to write this has been my worrying about if I'm going to get a good grade on my exam, or if I'm going to do well on this podcast and produce it the way I want it produced. And that worry disappears the moment I start to actually solve the problems. And it's not really worry anymore. Like I guess you can say, I was suffering. Here's one quote I want to say, and then it's just completely true and about worry. And it comes from, maybe the source is not important to some, but it is a Greek philosopher called Seneca, who was a Stoic, and he said that, I want to make sure that I get it here right. The phrase goes, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality," and that's something that I was suffering from, this excessive worry about what if I don't do so well on my exam, for example. But that worry can be different for you. And like I expressed in my short essay, my short paragraph there, that it just depends on a person's perspective on how much worry something is warranted. And I think it is natural to worry about things because you want a good outcome, or people generally want a good outcome for themselves and the people around them. So I imagine that if you don't worry about anything at all and you just go through life without thinking about the future, then you're just this in the moment type of character, and maybe you're more inclined to to have a hedonistic lifestyle, like just pursue your pleasures, and whatever's in the moment is gratifying. But on the flip side of that is delayed gratification is waiting for a big reward at the end of a long bout or a long term of work, and not ever getting a break, excessively working without reflection. I would say is also as equal as damaging to the person's mind if there isn't time for reflection and to contemplate what exactly your aim is in life. And my aim with this essay, this topic of worry, this emotion of being worried, is to kind of delve into that idea and try to find some nuances or something that is interesting about it. One thing that is interesting to me, and this morning I had a friend send me a video of this man talking about how as children we can just laugh naturally. We can just be ourselves naturally. We don't have to put on some type of mask or some type of personality uh, for the world to see. We are just naturally in this. We are just in a state of pure, raw emotion, and we don't have that rational side of our minds or the curated, cultured side of a person, of yourself, that is, heavily tied to culture. You are just this natural. You're just being yourself. But as you get older and you have responsibilities and duties, and you have all this pressure and stress, and you are more easily worried about things, your personality can shift, and you start to lose a little bit of what made you you in the beginning. And is that middle part of life that really is the part of life that can make you bitter and resentful, and that can guide you through the rest of your life in different positions of fulfillment. And for me, that message kind of resonated with me, of that middle part of life where you're still trying to figure things out and you're developing a personality to fit your career and to fit different aspects of your life, and you forget that child in you. And it's very tragic, because I think if you believe in God, and I do, God hasn't intended for life to turn out a certain way. And he's given me a certain personality that was curated maybe by God, and I have been distorted by the various things in life that has happened to me, the various situations, various lots of things have occurred in my life, and let's just say that um, it hasn't always been good. But the point is that this middle part is important for growth, even if at the time it felt for me that it was unnecessary pain, unnecessary time wasted with worrying about the future. Uh, it took me a long time to kind of realize that worrying wasn't going to solve my problems. And indeed, I was suffering more in imagination than in reality. Like how I said, I was worried about things happening, just worrying that action, that idea of worrying isn't real. It's all in the mind. It's not something that exists anywhere else but in the person's mind. And this excessive worrying, I somewhat argue that it was a waste of time. And I think that the only way I kind of got over the hurdle of worrying is just trying and other new things out. I worked in many jobs in my life, and I did many things in many hobbies and trying to figure out exactly what I like to do. And one of those things is podcasting. And even right now, I was worried about how this was going to turn out, but I don't feel so worried about it anymore. It's a process of learning. It's a process of, of trial and error. You know, calculated risk, and I understand like the worries that I have isn't exactly something isn't as a big of a worry as other people. They have, other people around the world have worries about where they're going to sleep tonight, what they're going to eat today, how they're going to survive, period. And I'm very fortunate and very lucky to not be in that position and to be worrying about um, more abstract ideas and things that are not necessary to survival. And I'm grateful. I'm grateful for that, and that gratitude has taken me out of my worry and more into the present moment. And it is something that I value is gratitude that gets me out of worryiness. But indeed, there are people, of course, that can't stop and worrying. Like I wrote here, and I had already said, but I'll repeat it here just because I think it's important to highlight. It says, uh, um, thinking open mindedly, let us consider that sources of worry deemed irrelevant by most people can be too much for some to live with. Let us imagine that these unfortunate souls constantly worry about almost everything in their day to day lives. There could be mental disorder or illness in this population that is keeping them from seeing the forest for the trees. It is keeping them from seeing the bigger picture. Now, we live in a world today that is very quick to find things that anger us, that makes us frustrated, that makes us sad. And all of these things are amplified more so because of the internet, because of social media. And so we are more prone to worrying about things that we can't control. It's outside of our influence. And one of the books that I have read in the last year, um, I think it's I think it's 5 Habits of Successful People or Influential People. I want to see that if I get it here right. Or is it 10? Sorry here for the dead air space, but I just want to make sure that I get this right. 10 Habits of Highly, I think it's highly, But I read this book around February of last year. It's called The Habits of Seven Effective People by Stephen R. Covey. And one of the first habits is being proactive. And in that chapter, you're basically introduced to the idea of circle of influence versus circle of control. And we have a certain circle of control, which is our actions, everyday actions, what we eat, who we talk to, where we work, that is generally under our control. And then there is a circle of concern. You can be worried about politics, you can be worried about the economy, you can be worried about, I don't know, some celebrity feud or a social media trend or whatever, X, Y, and Z, about something that is outside of your control. And generally, those things that are in the circle of concern, it's just something that we can't control. It's out of our control. And I don't know how else more to explain it, but when we focus on our circle of influence, we can increase our circle of influence. If you're able to be a responsible person who is able to do the habits of like taking care of yourself by making sure you eat something, making sure you're clean, take a shower, making sure you have chores done, just the very basics. And some of those basics psychologically could be like shelter, food, and water. And of course, after that, the survival basics are met, and then you go on to relationships with people and what gives you fulfillment. And this idea comes from, I think, is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And here I'll just pull it up. This is something I learned about in community college a couple of years ago. So here is Maslow's. So the very bottom, as I was explaining, is physiological needs. So like air, water, food, shelter, sleep, clothing, and reproduction. Safety needs, personal security, employment, resources, health, and property. And then up above, more on the hierarchy, is love and belonging, friendship, intimacy, family, sense of connection. And then above that is esteem, respect, self-esteem, status, recognition, strength, freedom. And then at the very top is self-actualization, desire to become the most that one can be. Generally, in our society, people have a lot of their needs met in terms of like safety, physiological, then safety, and love and belonging. But love and belonging is something that is generally in your circle of influence. You can choose your friends and friendships. You can choose who you love. You can choose, well, you can't choose your family. And so that's the tough part if you have problems with your family. And for sure, I admit to having seen that and experienced that, and also sense of connection. What does that mean? Well, what I think it means is a sense of being connected to your community, being a part of your community and helping your community and having that influence. And so psychologically, we start to see that as time goes on, we have different needs, that different wants and desires that need fulfillment. And if those needs and fulfillment, those needs are not met, then we don't feel fulfilled. And that first step starts with recognizing that there are some things that we should worry about and some things that we shouldn't worry about. And admittedly, I have been worried about friendship and worried about intimacy and worried about family and worried about a sense of connection with my community. And so I guess that has been something that I've been noticing about myself, and if we take Maslow's hierarchy of needs at face value and just look at it, okay, how does that connect with me? But even for you, the listener, maybe your circle of concern is something that you're trying to gain, and that might be more like respect, more like self-esteem or status, recognition, and maybe you want to get stronger physically, mentally, and just generally be free, like I have explained before. And I think that it's very binary to think that people just are in one class right after the other, but sometimes some physiological needs have to be met when we become too stressed out about life at the moment, when we're chasing more abstract goals that aren't physically here yet, and might even take long periods of time of deprivation uh, to achieve them. And so I I still, for me personally, a lot of those ideas are still very abstract to me, and still very, and it's just something that I'm still learning. Okay, and I recognize that. What I can't control though is how this podcast is going to be influential to young people, and even people my age and older. But my aim of this podcast was to kind of go deeper into certain aspects of life. And I've been on this pursuit of recognizing what exactly do I want to say on this, because I don't want to waste your time and waste other my time as well, because if this is something that's just satisfying because I'm getting listeners, and you know I don't really see myself doing that. I see myself more of like, how can I create something that is valuable, and something that is going to bring meaning to people's lives, and be a guide, uh, if even to myself, but I'm not seeking for fame or for money, but I'm seeking for information. I'm seeking for people that are in the same path as me, to trying to see what it how should life be best lived? How can we live better lives? And one thing that can cause a meaning of life existential type of thinking, or what is the purpose of my life, and start thinking like, well, maybe there is no purpose, is that worry, you know that philosophical question causes worry in a person, like maybe there isn't a meaning to life. Maybe there all of this is just passing the time until we die. The every day is just the same thing until death. And there are certain periods of time that happens. You're born, you grow up, you get a nice job, you get some money, and then you have a family, get married, or married with family, whatever order, and then retire, and then you die. And then you try to have some fun along the way. You try to meet some cool people, and people that are loyal to you, and whatever value system you have, and that's it. And so it's like, really, what is the purpose of life here? But that is an existential reason. Analyzing this problem can be difficult because for some people it's very obvious, and it's not like they think about it. They don't have a need to recognize a why what they do. I think if you're a religious person, you don't need a why. You just kind of think like, oh, okay, like I believe in God, and I think God has a purpose for me. And right now, God has put me in a position where He wants me to be in, and I'll just fulfill that. And I was taught that when I was a kid, because my mother was a very religious person. She always told me that I should have faith, and I would always try to, I wouldn't say argue, but I would question if there was an actual purpose to my suffering, or suffering of other people. Like, what is the point of their suffering? And she always told me that God had a reason for it, and I didn't have a clear understanding of God's plan, but just to have faith. There wasn't any reason to it, and that's not something she said, but she said that just to have faith. And I take that at face value, or take it, very head on. You start to think like, okay, let us consider that God does have a plan for us, and He's going to He's going to lead us into the right direction if we go with God's plan, or we are in a constant relationship with God by prayer, and keep your heart open to see where God is leading you down. And all of that makes me think of this of worry, of like worrying about if God is even real, if there even is a plan. And as I was a kid, that feeling still kind of is lingering in the back of my mind. And I think it's normal for people to question their beliefs, and to question why is it that they believe what they believe in, especially religious dogma or religious teachings. And it is important to ask those questions, to go into to keep an open mind, because once you realize that you have all the answers, then you don't continue to question. But I liked some of the answers that I was taught as a kid, is to have faith and to believe, even if your rational side of your brain is telling you that it's not going to work out, and when people aren't going to just give you they're not just going to give you things just because you ask for it. You have to work for them. And I take that and just go with it, because I believe in hard work, and I believe that you get what you deserve. And generally that's true, but there are exceptions to that, is that some people get things that they don't deserve. But there is a certain control that you can have over your life to make it the best it can be. And that part of that starts with like I have said, your circle of influence. My circle of influence always starts with myself, and I know that I can control myself from engaging in behaviors that have been self-destructive, like overeating, indulging in too much alcohol, and being antisocial. All of those things is like something that, I don't know, like, I guess that is controllable. I can change in some way. I can go out more. I can make better eating habits. And so it's just different things that I can control. Maybe in your personal life is you're attempting to restrict yourself, or you're trying to change the people that you hang out with. Maybe the people that you hang out with aren't they're not meeting the same value system that you have, and maybe they're making poor choices, and you want to stop talking to them and engaging in that type of relationship. And that's sometimes really difficult to admit, and to even change. Who are you going to talk to after that? You're still left wondering, like, okay, who really connects with me, and not just me right now, but the me in the future, like the me that I want to be, the me that is on a path towards growth, towards fulfillment. And all of that can be something that, upon reflection, you can start to obsess over, or even to be worried about. In actuality, I think that perspective of like worrying is is sometimes necessary. You know, you don't want to, like I have stated, you don't want to be in either extremes of deficiency or excess, but you want to be in the middle of worry. Um, there are moments, and sometimes I don't think that. Sometimes I think that whatever types of ideas of there, like no, don't worry about it, you'll be okay. I'm taking it just faith is even more stressful or concerning for me. You know, especially if you're on if you have a certain disposition towards doing high risk behaviors. I wouldn't tell a rock climber who has been practicing on the rope all the time to suddenly just start free climbing. You know what's it called? Uh, just climbing the mountain without a rope out of nowhere. You know, it takes practice. It takes calculated risk for them, I imagine. And that goes for any athletic pursuit. Is that it takes time for things to develop. Even athletes have their moments where they have to pull back to go forward. To go forward. Um, we all know of cases of like high, highly regarded athletes suddenly being injured, and so then there's a question of like, are they going to come back the same? Are they going to be able to be at the same level as they were before? You know, in their minds, I'm sure that they can be concerned about that and worried about people's opinions of that. But they can only control what they can control. If you're injured, what you can control is your rehab. How quickly can you come back, and that really just depends on how how much the athlete can mentally get through the hurdles of rehab. You know, especially well in my case, like I'm not an athlete, but I did play sports, and then about a year ago I injured my ankle, and I also hurt my what was it, my back. So I spent a lot of time last year injured, not working, in home, and I was very concerned about if I was going to be well enough to work, well enough to even walk around. To be honest with you, I was very hurt. I didn't have. I kept looking for solutions with doctors and all of this, but what I found is that mental strain was very difficult because there was so many things that I was worried about. Um, but what I could control ultimately was what brought me better, what brought me back to work, back to doing the things that I like to do physically. And in that struggle, I found that I have a bigger interest in some intellectual things like reading philosophy, reading psychology, or just reading in general, learning about things, writing. Um, so I've through my bad experiences at the time that it could be considered like very high risk, you know, situations where I couldn't earn income. I ended up finding a passion for other things. And for some athletes that are high level, there is no alternative, especially if like this is their means of income. And over the last couple of days, I've been looking at rivalries with wrestling, with pro wrestling, and this is maybe like for people that love pro wrestling and like to hear the stories of wrestlers. But I've always been fascinated about how I know, just get it out the way, the elephant out of the room. Pro wrestling is not real. There's a certain outcome already understood. But what is real about it is the athleticism. And being able to pull off wrestling moves that are very athletic. Even those moves can cause injury. And even through injury, those wrestlers still have to perform and still have to be there for all those people that have paid to see them. And so, seeing how they overcome adversity is inspirational, motivational. It's great. And for any kid that is looking for role models to see what it's like to overcome adversity from a physical ailment, I think wrestling is one of those avenues for that. But what was I going with that? Yeah. Well, I feel pretty good about what I had talked about with the topic of worrying. Of course, I also had to break down that worrying and stress is not the same. Worrying and stress, two different things, of course, because stress is more like what you feel in the moment when something stressful happens to you. Maybe you really grit your teeth. Maybe you'll start sweating and won't be able to give out say a sentence even. Your heart will start beating faster. That's what I mean about a stressful activity or a stressful event happens to you. Your eyes get dilated even, but that's just what happens when you get stressed out. Worrying is different, but it can make you stressed out if you're constantly worrying about something that has been traumatic to you. Worrying about traumatic. I would just stick with that. But worrying is more of like in the mind, right? And so the mind, when you're thinking negative, or you don't have your physiological needs met. Maybe you didn't eat something, maybe you didn't get enough sleep. You're more prone to these negative thoughts, and these negative thoughts can produce themselves in the form of worrying, which leads to other emotions, and that's like a topic for another podcast. But think of this episode as Worrying Part 1, and that's probably what I'm going to name this one, but this is Worrying Part 1. It's Worrying Part 1 because worrying extends itself to many aspects of life. Like I've mentioned before, your job, it could be worried about family, it could be worried about friends, it can be worried about how you're going to complete certain creative tasks. And my goal is to find what it is like, different ways to overcome worry. But not just worry. In the future, we'll come to a solution of like, how can we overcome negative emotion? And for at least this part 1, some of those answers that I came up with was, don't worry, do, complete. If there's a problem that you're worried about, the best thing to do is to face it head on. What is the solution to it? And if there isn't a solution to it, don't worry about it. Because you're worrying about it is causing you pain, psychological pain. It hasn't even happened yet, and you're worried about it. It is a perspective that people can have. One that maybe you will disagree with. Completely understand. For me, it does work. Where if I have a problem, how can I analyze it? Is it something that I should be worried about? Is it something that I would be better off if I just found a plan, a strategy towards fixing or solving this problem. But so many things often in life is not really something that you should be worried about. It's not something that you need to be obsessive over. See, your career, your family, all of that, you're going to say it's the most important thing to me. The most important, that it's the best thing that can happen to me, is that if my job is the most fulfilling, not even just fulfillment, but I enjoy it, that my family loves me, I can take care of them, and then I will be good. See, but the mind will want more. You want more. Maybe you want a six pack. Maybe you want more recognition from your peers. Maybe you want to be fulfilled in that way. So the mind starts searching. Oh, there has to be something that I actually want more than this. There's always more, you know. But you see, there isn't. There isn't an end. The only end in life is death. The only end in life is that. And until that point, we are constantly looking for things to give us meaning in life and to see, oh, you know, once I attain, you know, my degree, once I attain a promotion at work, once I attain a certain monetary value, then I'll be fulfilled. Once I get that car, once I get that house, once I have those shoes, once I have that hat, the clothes I want, the friends that I want, once I get that following, I will be happy. I will be fulfilled. I won't need anything else. And in some cases, maybe you will be fulfilled with that, like I said. But generally, probably not. The next day, what? Then what? It's how sometimes I think about how people get depressed after concerts or some type of experience that was, you know, full of dopamine and very happy, euphoric. Is that depression that people feel is after it's done, it's like, now what? You know, you're left with thinking like, okay, maybe I need that again. Maybe I need to experience that with more people. Maybe my best friend didn't go that way, but didn't come with me, and I still need to go with them. So just it's always a question of how can things be better. And I've been thinking about that lately. Is like, okay, improvement, great, and that constant improvement is good. To be a better person. I would say that the values, improvement of values and adherence to those values, following your value system, like if you value loyalty, if you value being honest, and if you value hard work, all of those things, if you pursue that, if you constantly pursue those values, I think that those things will put you in a state of flow, in a state of where you want to be. But when it comes to like material things, it's a little more it's a little more, I want to say abstract because it is very practical. You have a physical thing there. You could say, oh, now I've achieved my goal. I have that thing in my life. You want that nice car, and now you have it. Like, you can't. Some people would argue with like, oh, like I'm trying to make the point like, oh, I would say that car is not valuable because it's not a value, but it is valuable. It's cool to have a nice car. It's cool to have that. Why not? It sounds cool, drives nice, people like it. It's a good thing to pursue. My only problem with that is what your desire is going to. Yeah, it's great to have it, but then what comes afterward? After that, see, what comes after that? And it could be nothing. It could be nothing. And at that point, what do you do if you can't find the answer to that? See, my constant way of thinking is a little bit different than people, in terms of like, I recognize that I want material things in my life, but I recognize that the route towards that isn't necessarily just going straight into a job that is going to pay you the most. My whole thing is that it can be done following one's own values, and it can be done if there is a certain direction into virtue. Maybe not. Maybe I'm wrong. It could be that I'm wrong, and the way that the world works is that you have to cheat, you have to go against your values, you have to go do things that are against your ethical code, your sense of what's right and what's wrong, your morality, and that's how you achieve success. Could be. Why not? You have to consider it. I think people have to consider that is the case when you reflect on it, when you start thinking about it, because it's definitely possible to become successful. What you define as successful, the material aspect of life. Um, but for me, that's not a good way of achieving success. More success is like more of what I said. It's more about virtues and staying true to yourself and just things that we have been taught through stories and through through stories. The hero doesn't lie and cheat his way to power and to um, towards saving the world in that way, but they take an honest approach and work hard and achieve things through virtue. you know but there can be worry along that path, and being stressed out from school, I was worried about, like, am I doing the right thing? I got humbled, so humbled by the amount of I got humbled by school because I studied my ass off for an exam and I didn't get a good grade. I got a bad grade, matter of fact, and it made me so frustrated. How am I even smart enough to go back to school? I'm 26 years old. Maybe my time is done for this opportunity, and I don't have the willpower to do it, or even the intelligence to do it. And I said, fuck that. And I kept going. And I said, I'm going to keep on this path. I'm going to stay on this path. I'm already on it. Let's complete it. That was my attitude. I worked hard, and I ended up getting a better grade on it, better than I expected on the exam. And I'm so happy, so proud of myself that I finally achieved what I was aiming to do. And in fact, aimed at a certain position, and I got something higher, was even more euphoric. And that's that type of fulfillment that I'm talking about. It's something that isn't bought for. It's not something that you can just simply get, but takes time to achieve. And I feel the same way with let's say physical activity. Me right now, I'm overweight. I'm not as strong as I once was, and that has affected the way that I think and the way my mood and my sense of self. It's affected my confidence. And so, how can I readjust myself with the things that I've been learning from school, in terms of, like, having a disciplined approach to learning things? Like, how can I do that and with exercise again? I once I got hurt, I never, with my ankle and my back, I never really regained that energy to go into exercise the same way. I was always concerned. And then also my knee, I forgot to mention them. I've been having a little bit of knee problems here in my left knee. And I've been feeling like it's been like some type of meniscus tear that's been kind of like agitated a little bit. I've had meniscus tear on my right knee, but not on my left knee. So I was like concerned. So I stopped doing exercise. Didn't run. I stopped lifting weights, and that was a bad move on my part, because without that path to let out some steam, I felt like I was just keeping it in my mind too much, and so that hasn't been good at all. But I want to get back to that. I want to have a good amount of weeks where I just pursue physical activity, not as just a physical thing, but as a mental thing. It is something that I value, my health, but I want to see how true that is. And so one of those ways is by actually doing it and confronting the much needed questions and about my habits that I need to change. But yeah, so I've been on this long tangent here with you guys about worry, but I hope that this has been a great episode. I'm not clicking off yet. Just wanted to kind of leave with a couple of messages to my listeners, and thank you so much for people that have been reaching out in person and telling me that they'll listen to this, and telling me advice about how I can make this better, and just been so supportive. Like, it's been amazing to see that even though I'm not the most social person in real life, um, I can sense that people do care about me and have a genuine interest in what I want to say, and that brings me so much joy. And I'm really just lost for words for the support that I have received from people. So thank you. If you made it all the way down this episode, thank you so much. I appreciate it. I love you. Thank you. I'm I'm very blessed to be in this position where I can talk freely and not worry about being punished for the things that I say on this podcast. But I am aware of my position of like being able to express my feelings and thoughts about various topics, and I have a certain responsibility about what I say and what I do and how this affects people. But I still, recognize that I'm still learning. I'm still on the journey to being a master at this type of medium. And thank you for the people that are bearing with me and kind of like learning along with me in some sense. Uh, but primarily, this has been a great uh, venue, a great avenue for self-expression. There will be more episodes about certain emotions. I've been thinking about doing a podcast about an emotion of happiness, and that kind of like overlaps with this one. But also keep an eye out for different different projects of mine. I've been wanting to get like a camera. I wanted to make to kind of just go out more and take pictures of people doing what they love. And one of those things is athletics, is, obviously with the permission of the athlete, is to take pictures of them doing something that they love. And that is by playing their sport, or people maybe doing something that is difficult. I just like the idea of being able to go back into photography and utilize that previous skill set for something that is good. And yeah, my only concern, well, I shouldn't leave with that, right? Because I already talked about concern. Things are going to be okay, and I have various plans for this podcast in the future. I As of right now, though, if you don't see frequent episodes, don't worry. I'm okay. I'm going on to the last 2 weeks of university. First semester back to university. Well, first semester, I guess, in university. Previously, I went to community college. Now, this is like different. And to me, to some people, like, okay, school wasn't never that hard for me. For me, it has been. It's been difficult. It's been hard. It's been eye-opening, humbling, and bear with me here. I'm doing my best to keep up with episodes and doing my best with everything that I'm doing. Just trying my best 100%, going in on the things that I'm doing, and I'm very fortunate. I am so happy to be here. And yeah, I know that there's going to be times where I don't post as frequently, and that's okay. That's okay, because I know that this type of medium lends itself to kind of like that style of like posting and like having some time to do some actual real life things. But for me, my goal is not to be like that. I want to be more consistent, so I'm going to aim to be consistent. Just know that if I'm not as consistent, it's because I'm off doing other life stuff. So yeah, I'll just end the episode like that. Thank you guys for listening, and I appreciate it. This has been the first podcast with a video, so I look forward for my listeners to kind of have this now as a pairing to kind of to watch it now. So that's cool. It's in the vertical format as of now because I'm doing this off my phone. Saving up to get a camera so I can do it in a better aspect, but it's okay. Um, Great things happening. Thank you to my listeners, the great and powerful, everybody. Uh, it's been awesome. Thank you. Thanks for listening.